好，非常感谢大家参与今天西岸艺术与设计博览会的论坛板块。我是这场论坛的主持人 Ada Wu， 同时也是艺术对话三里屯 Art Talk 三里屯的创始人。今天我很荣幸邀请到英国伦敦世界艺术基金会的总监 Claire 女士同我共同主持这场论坛。Hello Claire。Hello。艺术对话三里屯 Art Talk 三里屯是2019年我们发起的公共艺术项目，从最早30人参与的艺术对话活动，发展为线上线下同时6000人互动的艺术内容平台。在过去1年，我们邀请了近100位艺术界的朋友作为嘉宾参与到线上和线下活动中。2020年，我们推出了自制的艺术视频节目 Thursday Show 周4秀，然后大家呢可以在各大平台搜索 ATS 艺术对话三里屯就可以观看了。今天我们在这里邀请了3位嘉宾，他们已经到了我们的会议室。那么首先让我介绍的是来自法国梵高艺术基金会的总监 Bice 女士。Hi Bice。
Hi Adam。Hello。
还有来自Rupert 家族的美术馆的馆长Robyn 女士。 Hi Robyn。Hello。 因为网络有点问题。那么还有一位嘉宾呢，因为他现在在路上，稍后呢他会进入我们的对话。那么首先我会邀请 Claire 向大家介绍一下 World Art Foundation 的一些简单的一些情况。那么我会把时间交给他，由他与今天的嘉宾进行主题对话：国际艺术基金会的运作和社会影响力。这场论坛的视频会后，大家可以在腾讯视频、微博、雅昌还有在艺 APP 的平台搜索 ATS 艺术对话三里屯即可观看。再次感谢大家。那么马上我们进入今天的主题论坛。Okay, I'm going to pass the mic to Claire.
Thank you, Ada. My name is Claire Hindle and I'm the Director of World Art Foundations. We were founded 5 years ago by Helena Stork and Peter Deckers Barroza. They launched the World Art Foundations as a result of their experience founding and managing the Herman Kricke Foundation. They strongly felt the need for a network as there was nothing already in existence. They saw each art foundation as beautiful islands with many hidden jewels, and therefore they designed the ship as a go-between whilst also putting them in the spotlight. We are a hub for art foundations around the world. On our website, we've listed over 350 organisations, and here, as well as on social media, we share information about each unique art foundation, their history, information about art collections, as well as exhibitions. We also run an active membership programme, enabling art foundations to connect and exchange experiences and knowledge. If you'd like to see into the world of art foundations, then do follow us. I'm honoured and delighted today to have with me directors from 3 of our members. Bice Curiger from Fondation Vincent van Gogh, Arles in France, José Lebrero Stals from Museum Picasso Málaga in Spain, Robyn Cedras-Tobin from the Rupert Museum in South Africa. As Ada kindly said, we'll start our talk by listening to introductions from each of them. Let's begin with Bice.
And hello, everyone. My name is Bice Curiger. I'm very pleased to present you our foundation, which is dedicated to the legacy of the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. We are situated in the city of Arles in the south of France. Vincent van Gogh wants to offer a unique approach to Vincent van Gogh in exploring the resonance of his art and thinking with the work of artists of today. The Fondation was inaugurated in 2014. The founder is Luc Hofmann. He was an ornithologist and an ecological pioneer from a wealthy Swiss family of patrons. At the end of his life, he wanted to establish a place of reflection and artistic production dedicated to the memory and legacy of Vincent van Gogh, especially because there were no Van Gogh paintings in Arles, here where Vincent has spent his artistically most prolific 18 months of his life. Luc Hofmann established an agreement with the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam for annual loans of Van Gogh paintings. Since 2014, at least one painting is always on view. It is changed once a year. In spring until autumn, the high season of tourism, there are always ambitious exhibitions, including larger groups of Van Gogh paintings. But in winter also, we have the foundation open and show monographic or thematical shows. In the meantime, we have like this also happily received many loans from all over the world, from museums and private collections. Therefore, during the last 6 years, we have been able to show subsequently 66 paintings by Van Gogh and 50 drawings by Van Gogh in our foundation. The building is situated in the center of the old town of Arles, which is declared UNESCO World Heritage. It is partly from the 15th century and has been restructured by Floor architects. We closely collaborated with the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam for all museological issues for climate control and security, etc. The collaboration with artists already began in the planning phase of constructing and renovating the building, where very important interventions were added by Bertrand Lavier, who created the entrance gate, and on the roof with its 70 colored unique glass pieces by Swiss artist Raphael Hefti. The exhibition space covers 1,000 square meters and includes spaces with high ceiling, neutral interiors, as well as more intimate former living quarters. Added are also 2 huge terraces and a courtyard where we can organize events. The Fondation Vincent van Gogh is a hybrid, sometimes a museum, sometimes an art gallery, and above everything, the name of Vincent van Gogh hovers as a challenging and inspiring reference. From the outset, our focus was directed both at Van Gogh and at contemporary art, which enables us to see historical works through fresh eyes. Yeah.
And moving on to Jose.
Okay, ni hao, hello, buenas tardes, bonjour or bonsoir. I'm very glad to participate again in this forum and very excited to have the chance to contact with our Chinese friends. Our museum have been twice doing small projects in Beijing and in Shanghai in last year, so we have some nice rememberings of that. The Picasso Museo Málaga is the result of the cultural policy of the government of Andalusia and the determination of Christine and Bernard Ruiz Picasso, the painter's daughter-in-law and grandson, made it possible for this monographic museum dedicated to studying the work of the most renowned Spanish painter in the world, Pablo Picasso, to open its doors in 2003. So we are now a 17 years old, somehow young institution, in the unique surroundings of the Palacio de Buenavista, there where we are in the center of Málaga. Their donation of the Picasso family provided the works that allow Málaga, our town, to enjoy this space today, a space dedicated to an artist who is essential to understanding the fundamental episodes and discoveries that form part of the fascinating history of 20th century art. The chronological and thematic tour of the rooms of the permanent collection, 12 rooms, approximately 168 works now, encompasses 8 decades of his artistic production and reveals fundamental keys to understanding his work, his era, and his contribution to the history of art. Throughout the journey that begins here, this guide will offer you, if you come to Malaga, please come to Malaga. We don't know when, but we hope to see you in Malaga better soon as late, but we don't know. But anyway, through this tour, this guide will offer you individual commentaries and details regarding a selection of works that express the artist's ideas and emotions. The organization of this collection now that we call Dialogues with Picasso aims to underline the extraordinary diversity of Picasso imagination, along with his indisputable contribution to the history of 20th century art. As I said, we hope to see you soon here, and we hope that you will enjoy the works we present here today, and hopefully not only in a digital way. Thanks.
Thank you. And then on to Robyn from Rupert Museum.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be able to share a bit about my museum and enjoy the fact that I have my fellow companions as well to enjoy the chat, and we can share with our Chinese counterparts. So excited to be here, and thank you again. And yeah, today I'm hoping that you'll all travel to South Africa once you've heard what I have to say about the Rupert Museum. It's a lovely, beautiful space. It's in Stellenbosch, which is in the Cape in South Africa itself, and very close to the city, Cape Town. It's known quite well already for showcasing South African modern art. And our modern period is a little bit delayed to the European understanding of modernism. But the collection is quite broad in terms of what it represents with our South African artists. Also in the collection is quite a lot of international artists' work. So we've got work by Auguste Rodin, or many of his contemporaries, also artists like Kette Colwert and Sparlach, and also quite a big portion of French modern tapestries in the collection by Jean Loussa, Robert Wojcinski, and several others. So it's really quite a broad collection, but we try and focus at the space in the museum on the South African side of things. It also just gives people visiting the country and visiting our museum just a peek into what South African art is like. And it includes, I said, the 20th century, even quite late and just onto the 21st century. So as I talk about the collection, you'll get a little bit more of a sense of that. The collection was started by the late Dr. and Mrs. Rupert in the 1940s. And they had a great love of art. They cared about not only collecting art for the love of enjoying art, but also they supported many artists, many art-related projects. And Dr. Rupert himself, a self-made businessman who was incredibly successful. At their heart, they really felt that art was a space that we could really share and exchange. And so this was quite important to them. But it was only after a fire broke out at their family home that Mrs. Rupert then decided it was time they actually build a space to showcase the collection that's closest to their heart. And this is managed by the Rupert Art Foundation. So she got together with a local architect, Hannes Meyring, and this was only in 2003, so it's quite a new space. And they decided to build something that looked like it belonged in the Stellenbosch winelands, that it would speak the vernacular of the architectural style, which is the Cape Dutch style. It's right next to a river. So it just needed to be, for them, a space that was tranquil, that would allow the artworks to really shine and give people time to just really appreciate what the art was about. And also have a sense of homeliness about it. Mrs. Rupert herself was somebody who didn't want very kind of flashy things. She wanted you to be able to come into the space and see possibly even all the collection at one time. So she was interested in salon hanging, you know, and was a bit of a battle between her and the architect, and eventually they decided on I would say, a compromise of still a modern look and feel, but very much the earthy homeliness that she really wanted to represent in the space. So yeah, that's the Rupert Museum introduction.
Nice, right? Okay, so Bice, how is Vincent van Gogh's legacy upheld within your exhibition program?
Yes, I know some people think how boring it must be to run a museum dedicated to a single artist, and even more so, one dedicated to an artist thoroughly battered by mass cultural success like Van Gogh. But it is quite the opposite. I assure you, today's artists, the ones with whom we collaborate, offer unexpected insights that sharpen our view of the past. The exhibition program follows a confrontational and expansive principle in presenting, on one hand, large monographic shows like the one with more historic and even unfamiliar figures like the painter Alice Neal or Georgian so-called primitivist Nico Pirosmani, or the photographer Roberto Donetta. It has been particularly encouraging and an important sign that these exhibitions have appealed to a wide and enthusiastic public. Like Van Gogh, these three artists embrace a direct visual language and a distinctly humanist outlook. Our main concern is it possible to free Van Gogh again and again, even if only for a moment, from the cliches established over the past decades, and to consciously illuminate and dismantle them from the distance of our own day and through the neighboring presence of contemporary art? Working with artists such as Thomas Hirschhorn, Ronnie Horn, Camille Henrot, Urs Fischer, Jan Peiming, Elizabeth Payton, and Glenn Brown, among others, we have been lucky to see how enthusiastically they have responded to our invitation to exhibit in the context of an institution dedicated to Van Gogh's legacy. We have been guided by the idea of cinematic montage in juxtaposing what is generally shown separately, namely contemporary art on one side and Van Gogh on the other, and in our constant referencing Vincent's works, his life and his significance in the collective imagination. We especially have also developed many thematic exhibitions, like, for instance, in 2018, a show called Hot Sun, Late Sun, Modernism Untamed, which brought together artists from Van Gogh, Adolphe Monticelli, Pablo Picasso, Germaine Richier, Alexander Calder, Joe Mitchell, Sigmar Polke, Etel Adnan, up to even the jazz musician Sun Ra and his orchestra. And the subtext was also the relation to the Mediterranean culture and moment of modernism hitting the Mediterranean era. Yes.
Thank you. And Jose, may I ask you, you have an up and coming exhibition that you hopefully will open in January for Miguel Pacello, Metamorphosis. And I wanted to ask you whether there was a dialogue, of course, in a similar vein with Pablo Picasso.
Thanks for this question. In a different way, but somehow similar to the program of the Van Gogh Museum, as Bice Curiger said, we are very happy to have the privilege to work in a intensive, in a permanent way with one artist, in our case, Pablo Picasso, because this gives to our museum the possibility not only to show works, it gives the possibility to investigate about the the context of these works, to deal with the archives. This means with all what was produced around these works by the artist, but at the same time to explore his personality. I mean, artists like Van Gogh or like Pablo Picasso, they didn't only produce a fantastic work, but they were really strong personalities. So these, I think, are some of the positive things to work in a monographic museum dealing with one artist. But as Bice Curiger in Arles, the Van Gogh Museum, we have been dealing with contemporaneity too. The fact that next year, hopefully in January 2021, we open this exhibition with Miquel Barceló, a contemporary Spanish artist who now is around 60 years old, is one of the many exhibitions that we did in the past, like showing works from artists like Martin Kippenberger, Bruce Nauman, Richard Prince, Andy Warhol, Jackson Pollock, Louis Bourgeois, and so on and so on. Why to do an exhibition of Miquel Barceló in the Picasso Museum? There are many links. Both artists Picasso was and Miquel Barceló is very sensible to art history. Both artists love to go into museums. Both artists explore, study, are very conscious that the individual production of artistic works can be very much linked to what other artists did. And with this, I want to say both artists are very sensible to memory. Another aspect, what links Pablo Picasso and Miquel Barceló is the interest of both for what we can call applied arts, popular culture. Let's talk about ceramics, something that in China is a wonderful work done through centuries. Miquel Barceló is very interested in ceramics. Pablo Picasso was very interested in ceramics, and both Picasso manifest several times, as Miquel Barceló says today, that for them to work in the three-dimensional world with ceramics is not very different as to paint paintings. So this is, I think, something very interesting, how painters explore three-dimensionality through something as old as, let's say, archaic as a ceramic, something that was done by hands or is done by hands for to eat, for to drink. And so on and so on. We think that it's a good opportunity to bring Miquel Barceló in the world of Pablo Picasso, and both artists are very linked to literature in a different ways. But for Picasso, poets have been very important. His relation to very experimental, imaginative poets at the beginning of the 20th century in Paris, like Guillaume Apollinaire, Jean Cocteau, Max Jacob, or in the case of Miquel Barceló, who have been illustrating books from Goethe, Shakespeare, or he's very much linked to literature. So I think there are several reasons to contextualize the contemporary work of Miquel Barceló in our museum, and in January we'll see if our considerations, if our intuitions, if our research is something that will be an experience for the visitor. We like very much to connect the present with the past, and see, this is a good way probably to make dialogues between some contemporary artists, and in our case, Pablo Picasso.
Within the world of private art foundations, not many people get to experience the transition from one generation to the next. How was it for you moving from the original founders, Dr. and Mrs. Rupert, to their granddaughter, Heneli Rupert, maintaining their original mission, yet making changes to reflect the new generation?
Thank you for that question. I think what's been interesting for me is that I've noted such parallels between what the museum stood for originally and Hannelie's own vision for us going forward. And it really starts when you look at how Dr. and Mrs. Rupert supported the arts through their lifetime. In fact, from the late 60s already, they had competitions for children. They later on also had exchanges with exhibitions of South African artists' work that they managed to put together and travel to Europe, to other parts of the world, and vice versa. They brought international art into South Africa for the South African public to enjoy. And this really speaks to an ethos that's very much about sharing. Another part that was important for them is that the collection be seen in its entirety at all times. So we do have a storeroom, but compared to other spaces, it's really very small. We try and keep the artwork seen, whether it's in the corporate spaces that belong to the various businesses that are affiliated with the family, or even in the guest houses, or at the Rupert Museum. And so we've also got a few sister sites at the in Graaff-Reinet called the Jan Rupert Center. We work with the Hester Rupert Museum, which is a municipal museum in Graaff-Reinet. And so we've got quite a few opportunities to show the work. And that comes from what Dr. and Mrs. Rupert really instilled. Also, apart from that, they were quite instrumental in working with the artists and helping them develop their careers. So there would be individuals that they loved their work. They would purchase their work directly from them. They would visit them in their studios. They would listen to their stories to find out, where their lives are going and what kind of support they need. And that kind of direct, I would say direct dealing with the artists also affected the way they acquired art. So they didn't have a middleman, as it were, a middle person. They would speak directly to the artist and go and visit exhibitions themselves, choose what they wanted. And I see this today still very much in the way Hannelie has now assisted us in the process of, I would say, refreshing the museum. So the big part of the change for us has been really the renovation of the physical space, which we've changed maybe just cosmetically a little bit on the inside to freshen it up. On the outside, we've got a fabulous new indigenous garden. We've taken down the big electrified fence in the front and opened it up so that people can see that it's a space that they should, come and visit. We've got a beautiful glass entrance, which is a new structure, which you'll see in the image there. And that's, it's just so much more inviting. It just gives you the sense of a contemporary space. Although we are very much showing our modern artworks, we are a contemporary space. And then the other new inclusion is our maker studio, which is a workshop space. And so, as I mentioned there, Rupert Museum, a museum without walls, that little phrase was coined by Miss Hannelie Rupert. And for her, although we do have walls, it's really more about our reach as an institution and also as a center or a node of, I would say, activity, learning, and exploration, which is very, very important to her. So obviously at the center of that is, in fact, our public programming, which is a very brand new part of what we're doing, which I will unpack a little bit later as well. But to give you an idea of what we looked like before, that was us in 2005. So you'll see we have these kind of terracotta tiles to give that homely feel. On the outside, you can see what the Cape Winelands looked like there and what our little entrance looked like before, the image just below that. So it is quite a dramatic change, just although it's smaller things that we've done. This is what the space looks like on the inside now. So very much refreshed, still showing our own collection, but including quite a few loaned pieces to have it in conversation with the collection. And so that's the transition. I think I mentioned everything.
Thank you. And then I will pass to Ada.
Hello, yes. So last question is to every guest. So the question is, art foundations and museums around the world are no longer just places to visit and appreciate art. They played a vital role with communities to provide lasting social impact. How are you all using your collection and the programs to support this growing development? Let's start with José.
Okay, thank you, Ada, for this question. Very interesting, very important question. I think all we know as professionals and people that love art, that art is not only for contemplation. It's true that we come from a tradition in which museums, at least in Europe, have been conceived, have been done just to show works of art, to study works of art, and to show works of art. But we know more and more that the museum is a social place, a place where communities can meet, a place where discussion is something that not necessarily is related to antagonism in a violent way. So I think that museums in our days have more and more a social task, a social responsibility to related to questions of social inclusion, to consideration of communities who have been still not integrated in the, let's say, in the mainstream. So in our case, more and more, we see that art, in our case, Pablo Picasso or the other artists and works of art that we show, help us to develop strong educational projects. We are more and more working, especially this year because the pandemic, into transfer the knowledge that we have in our archives, in our collections, in our art department, into digital, with the effort to spread around new educational programs who help not necessarily only to know better art history or to know better who was Pablo Picasso, but as I said, to promote dialogue, to promote discussion, to promote the respect to diversity, and to construct a kind of a common identity. And so this is one of our new tasks, let's say the social museum, combined with our traditional task, who is to explore and to show, in our case, Pablo Picasso work.
Thank you. So next, let's go on to Bice.
Yes. It is very important to address the local people, even those who have never visited a museum, as well as the specialists in New York, Paris, or Shanghai. For us, Arles offers a wonderful opportunity to explore calmly new possibilities, something you might not be able to pursue in a big metropolis where you are very naturally part of a cultural machine and the art industry, yes, where propositions are quickly embraced and digested. Here, things grow slowly, but with a special feeling of experienced intensity. So Arles offers a rich cultural history, and the mood today is one of new departures. Here, over the past few years at the Parc des Ateliers, the Luma Foundation has been created an innovative cultural center initiated by Maya Hoffmann, who is also president of our Gogh Foundation. She is the daughter of our founder, Luc Hoffmann. Next spring, there is an impressive new building designed by the architect Frank Gehry, who is going to be inaugurated in Arles. Luma's project is very, very exciting and of great topicality. It is already settled for a couple of years in former railway workshops. And are already showing very exciting work over the last couple of years. To come back to our Fondation Van Gogh, in times of great upheaval, I plead for an expanded art history with a selective and thoughtful response to popular culture, as José also was mentioning, both historical and contemporary. This can also include arts and crafts or subcultures. In museums, we have to move away from a too puristically heroic and art history with its fetishization of the masterpiece, away from a history that remains too much in the convention of a canonical narrative of the history of style and form. But I also plead for differentiated, intelligent exploitation of the potential of the museum and art history to protect, defend, and at the same time open up the art discourse. The museum represents a productive in-between space, but it is important to keep clearing this space to make sure there is room for the unexpected. A museum is both expansive and introverted. Yes, I mentioned the 2 huge terraces where we organize events, especially in summer. So we include also in winter very much the local public. We organize on a regular basis talks which are called My Van Gogh. This is to let the subjective view in the museum. We invite not only art specialists like artists, photographers, art historians, but also common people, sociologists, writers, people who grew up in Arles and tell us how they have heard about this phantom Van Gogh when they were young, for instance. The format is open. It can be a conversation, a presentation, a musical presentation, and this has been very successful. And like this, we started from scratch to have many relationships with local people. And of course, we are at the same time specialized professionals with our networks in the big metropolis, people coming in. So it is really enjoyable to work in an institution like ours, where we always have the feeling to experiment in a little in a way with the local people and to charm them, to include them, to have exchange with them. And yeah, I stop here.
Yes, that's quite at the heart of what we're doing since we've renovated the space and reopened in May of 2019. You'll see the images I've included here. These are just examples of some of the programs that we would have for what we call our Museum Saturday. So at the last Saturday of every month, we have a kind of open day at the museum. And the idea is really to draw people who are from 6 years old to 86 years old and older, you know, to come to enjoy the space. We've got music, live music happening on the day. We've got art talks. Part of the program is also workshops, which include workshops for the young, as you can see on the left there. And also the adults, we have professional artists come in, and it also gives them a great platform because they then get to work directly with the public. They get a little bit more exposure as well. And through some of these Museum Saturdays that we planned, we also then managed to do some pop-up exhibitions with with these artists. So it really allows, and that's always in conversation with the exhibitions that we currently have on show. So it really allows not only the new living artists to be in conversation with our collection, but also gives the public access or a way of understanding our art, which I think opens it up to make it just so much more accessible. On the next slide, you'll see I've also included some of the flyers that come with Museum Saturday. So we center it not only around the visual arts, but also on performative arts such as poetry, there would be music, and also all of our cultural things which are surrounded by, you know, food, the love of food, celebrating food. So many of our public holidays and so on are centered around specific foods, and those are always celebrated with our Museum Saturdays as well. And then another important way for us to give, I think, artists as well as the public an opportunity to engage with living artists and their production is by partnering with other big already existing projects. Like, for example, we've got Woordfeest that happened earlier this year, which is very much more literature, you know, a literary festival, but they also have quite an active performative and visual arts side of their program. So we piggybacked onto that big happening that happens, and you know, it's lots of people flock to Stellenbosch, and we managed to host a few of their items on our space. So the image you're looking at the moment, this was part of a group show that was curated by Wolf Brits, called Planted 2020. And who you see in front of you there is Zayan Khan. She was reclaiming the pantry. And Zayan's work is really one of these interesting interdisciplinary types of projects. She works to understand the transformation of food, the possibilities of food systems, and that they don't only depend on the industrialized agriculture that we understand, you know, that instead they also can come from a decentralized environment, which is influenced by race, culture, you know, practice in different locations. And this all plays quite a significant role into what she produces. So we managed to then show in our maker studio an installation by Zan Khan, which is just behind her that you can see there. And then she also led several workshops during the literature festival, which brought many, many feet to the museum. And I was really, really happy with that project. Here you see here you see Neil LaRue, also one of Wolf Brits's group artists. And he's produced, I would say, it's almost a drawing, a three-dimensional drawing in wire, really, which happened outside the museum on our grounds. And the concept looks at the idea of the fence and what a fence is. It's used in agriculture, it's used in security, it's crowd control, it defines ownership of property. And this is a very interesting topic for this young man. And he felt that if he could have this 10-day process where he shows us how he builds these fences, it would also give people a chance to question the fence, which it seems like such a simple thing, but it's a big issue for us in South Africa, land and ownership and who's allowed in and who's not, and these sorts of things. So this was quite an interesting project that he shared with us as well. And then we also had another artist, a young artist, Abri de Swat, with a few of his friends doing a performative piece that moved around the museum onto the adjacent vineyards and ended off at a bridge by the riverside. So this was quite an interesting project as well, because here he looked at what I'd say is the voice of the marginalized in society, that open and public spaces often become a place where we can voice our opinions. So he was looking at graffiti, he was looking at, you know, the marks that are made on our city and our town through people who maybe weren't allowed to do that. So yes, so he led the whole party around and eventually ended up with a graffiti piece that was part of that display. So that was quite an interesting project that we did with Woordfeest. Another way that we're managing to reach out to our artists is by this particular project you're looking at there, which we call the Open Call to Artists. The objective of this was really to invite artists to engage with this very monumental piece by Michel Negrini. And they need to produce the works. And once we've got a good selection, we will show that selection at one of our sister sites, which is the Jan Rupert Art Center in Graffiti. And that smaller group of artists would then also be potentially offered solo shows at our Inibala gallery, which is one of another project that is also one of the Rupert family's projects. So it just gives possibly even unknown artists an opportunity to show their work. This particular work that you're looking at, it's all based on, it's Michel Negrini's what we call the color symphony. And it includes 395 smaller panels that eventually, if installed in one long strip, stretches 16 meters long. So it's quite a mesmerizing piece. And this particular display that you see, that we've decided to rather actually display it all around you. So you in the space, you look around, you see the flowers, it's very much botanically themed, and you look down into the field of flowers, that is the central panel that you see there. And we just felt that it was a great way to open the space up again, since everybody was, you know, cooped up with lockdown, and it's spring in South Africa for us. So this open call has just gone out, and early next year it will be realized in the smaller group show in Graffiti. So we're very much looking forward to that. There's another image of it. So you see she's done the whole color spectrum. And then I moved to another project. This is quite a big project. We call the Social Impact Art Prize. And here the objective was really to establish a South African art prize with a focus on social impact directly, to have a measurable effect on individuals and communities. And the awarded projects needed to demonstrate creative ways to address social challenges. So anybody could pretty much enter. So we had artists, architects, engineers, landscapers, environmentalists, all kinds of creative visionaries who, you know, had ideas about community-based projects. And once their ideas were submitted, we then chose 6 finalists. And these 6 finalists became a group show that we had at the Rupert Museum, and has now moved on to the Jan Rupert Center in Graffiti. So that's currently on show there. And from those 6, we then awarded 3 of those projects the possibility to actually be realized fully in Graffiti. And I'll in fact mention all 6 of the projects, which was Hello Volk, Tears Become Rain, Planted, Mirage, The Long Table, and Revealing the City. Those were the 6 that we were showing currently. This is just a view of Graffiti, and as you can see, it's semi-arid. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, vast, very, very long-standing issues with poverty in the area. It's a beautiful little town with lots of historical buildings as well, but drought and lack of jobs and these sorts of things really create a lot of problems in the area. The Rupert family is also originally from Graffiti, and so hence the connection with this lovely old town. That gives you an idea there of Hello Volk. Hello Volk was one of the winners, and it's by Studio Maas and Gustav Prakelt. The artwork or the object would actually be a large cloud, which is a cloud-shaped sculpture over a public garden. And this cloud will collect water from the atmosphere, which will be used to water that garden. And it also acts symbolically as a cloud, you know, offering free Wi-Fi to the community. So you can come and enjoy the park, you can sit in this space, and you have internet access as well. Part of this project as well is to teach teach young women of the area, to teach them coding. So it's quite a lovely project because you get to share skills, you get to learn new skills, and it's really much needed skills in the area. Another project is Tears Become Rain by David Britz and Raven Huntsman. And here the program is actually, it's a mass choir response to the climate crisis. It's based on the story of, it's a San story of a young boy who lived in a time of a terrible drought. And he was so sad about the animals, the farm animals were dying, his family was struggling, and he started crying. And he couldn't stop crying, and eventually his tears became rain. So it's just this beautiful myth that really encapsulates what this mass choir program is about. And it celebrates the very rich chorale history in the area. And the aim of the project is also to educate, inform, and entertain. So they want to draw more people to this project. Tears Become Rain is also about connecting with the ancestors, their storytelling, about reclaiming these oral histories that are kind of vanishing from our world. So it's quite a lovely project as well. And then the final project that was awarded was Planted by Lorenzo Nasimbeni and Casper Lundi, as well as Andrew Brose, is very much a project also looking at the indigenous plants of the area. It wants to celebrate the plant life of Graaff-Reinet and the knowledge derived from it. So already plants are used in various medicines, in food, as well as even building material. And this is all very much happening without intervention from the outside world. But yet, there's so much more that can be done with it. So what Planted would like to do is to really give the people of the area a platform to further research the medicinal qualities of the plants, all the other uses that they already have found, but to share it also with the broader world. So it's really a test ground for local researchers, even artists, designers who want to engage. So this project is one of my favorites because it really looks at the world going forward and how we can be more sustainable in everything we do and in all the products that we make.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Claire, Bice, and José, and Robyn. So I'm going to close the event. I'm going to speak with our audience today. 在这场论坛已经结束，那么再次感谢来参与这场活动的朋友，也再次感谢西安艺术与设计博览会为我们提供这样的活动机会。那么我们希望明年再会。Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.